An anti-villain is best described as a character with heroic goals, personality traits, and virtues, but who is ultimately the antagonist of a narrative. To be completely honest, I struggled for a long time to find a good topic of discussion for a video on Elden Ring. Longtime viewers will know that I'm practically obsessed with this game. The first time I booted it up, I was utterly floored by the game's story, characters, themes, and lore. I don't know how much of this impeccable writing is credited to George R.R. Martin, but you can definitely feel his influence throughout. And after years of watching comprehensive deep dive videos into the game's lore, several of my own playthroughs, and over 300 hours of gameplay, I think I've finally found a subject that suits my particular flavor of analysis. Today, I'd like to examine the penultimate boss of the game, Radagon of the Golden Order. Over the course of my extensive experience with Elden Ring, this character has consistently fascinated and intrigued me. And as we all know, FromSoft doesn't make a character one of the final bosses unless they're important in some way. Well, unless they're Gideon.
To stand before the Elden Ring, to become Elden Lord. What a sad state of affairs.
Jokes aside, I find Radagon to be a profoundly tragic character, and one that, in any other game, would be the hero of the story. But in his current state, he's been reduced to little more than a roadblock in our path to become Elden Lord. Be warned, if you haven't played Elden Ring yet for some reason, this video will contain heavy spoilers for the main game as well as the DLC. Now, let's begin. Radagon is one of the more mysterious characters in the game. The only concrete information we have about him is from a brief dialogue with Muriel at the Church of Vows and a handful of item descriptions. For that reason, it is important to take this video with a grain of salt, as most of it will be theory crafting and personal conjecture. But to fully understand Radagon, we must first understand his literal other half, Queen Marika, the Eternal. Marika was born in a small village within a land that would eventually become known as the Realm of Shadow. Her people were tortured, abused, and violated for untold millennia. She no doubt prayed day and night for some form of retribution for her people, and eventually, she would have it. An organization known as the Golden Order, serving an outer god known as the Greater Will, would find Marika and see her potential as a leader and possible figurehead for the Order. They would take her away from the Realm of Shadow to the lands between and begin grooming her for ascension into godhood. Becoming a god in the world of Elden Ring is not as simple as divine intervention. It requires a divesting of aspects of one's very being. Sometimes, these aspects can manifest themselves as entirely separate living beings, capable of independent thought, action, and desire. And it would appear that one of these aspects would eventually become Radagon. As to what aspect of Marika Radagon is meant to embody, we'll get to that later. It would appear that during Marika's rise to power, the two would have some kind of pseudo-ancestral relationship, as Marika would soon give birth to Mesmer and Melina, and well, it doesn't take a genius to guess who their father is. However, the nature of this stage of Radagon's relationship with Marika is shrouded in mystery. Whereas Mesmer seemed to be well known throughout the lands between, Radagon would not be for some time, and nobody seems to be aware of Melina's existence. Maybe it was nothing more than a fling, or perhaps the Golden Order was preparing Radagon to be Marika's first consort and Elden Lord, but eventually decided against it for whatever reason. Or maybe the nature of this romance was something more crass and selfish on Marika's part, akin to the relationship between Jaime and Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. There's no concrete information in any particular way, but it is interesting to think about. Nonetheless, Marika would eventually take a great warrior known as Godfrey as her first Elden Lord, and would begin a crusade that would establish the Golden Order as the ultimate power of the Lands Between, attempting to wipe out all of its enemies in one fell swoop. Godfrey and his armies would raid the mountaintops of the giants, slaughtering them as Marika herself would tend to their nameless god. Marika's guardian shadow, a fierce beast known as Malekith, would be sent after the head of a being known as the Glomide Queen, a task he reportedly accomplished with ease. After this, Radagon, who no doubt was waiting in the shadows for his chance to serve, was sent with the armies of the Golden Order to conquer the magical land of Liurnia. There, he would find something he certainly never expected: love. The Golden Order's war with Liurnia and the Academy of Raya Lucaria proved to be little more than a glorified standstill. The Order's forces couldn't seem to gain any ground, and the Academy certainly refused to give any. Despite this, the war raged on, with Radagon seemingly always on the front line. It was there he would meet Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. The two met each other in battle on several occasions, and by all accounts, developed not only respect, but even an infatuation with one another. Eventually, Marika would decide to cut her losses in Liurnia, offering a truce in exchange for the Academy's loyalty to the Golden Order. Rennala would accept this proposal, and Radagon sought atonement for his involvement in the war, seeking forgiveness from the people of Liurnia. Surprisingly, it would seem he was granted this, and he would marry Rennala at the Church of Vows. These two, by all accounts, had a healthy, loving relationship. They would go on to have 3 children, Ranni, Rykard, and Radagon, and it would appear that Radagon was a loving and respected father. A young Radagon and the older Messmer would even become good friends and loyal comrades. However, now that the Golden Order was an established power with immense resources, Marika would begin the crusade to avenge her people, sending Messmer to lead the charge. This would be the last time Radagon would ever see his firstborn son. Messmer led his mother's crusade efficiently and violently, and Marika herself would finally ascend to godhood through the blood of her conquest. However, upon doing so, she would learn something terrifying, after which the Realm of Shadow was hidden away in its entirety, along with Messmer and the countless faithfuls that served under him, never to be seen again. It's unclear as to how Radagon reacted to this outcome. Given his relationships with his children before and after this incident, I can't imagine that he would have been okay with it. However, I also doubt that at this point he had the nerve to question Marika's judgment. Following this, without warning, Godfrey was banished from the Lands Between, and Radagon was ordered to return to the capital of Leyndell to become Marika's new consort. He did so without question. His sudden abandonment of Rennala broke her heart, leaving her depressed and lost. Additionally, it would seem this decision destroyed his relationship with his daughter, Ranni, as she no doubt resented him for his treatment of her mother. Radagon and Rykard more than likely shared this sentiment, but it would seem that Radagon tried to make amends in what little ways he could, evidently convincing Marika to elevate his children to the status of demigod, granting them even more power than they already had as royalty in the Lands Between. It's here that I would finally like to address exactly what aspects of Marika's self she had to divest to create Radagon. After all my research and subsequent playthroughs, I think Radagon is the embodiment of Marika's loyalty. I don't think it's too far off to assume that he holds Marika in high regard, given that without her, he wouldn't exist. And I could absolutely believe that he could be manipulated, whether intentionally or otherwise, into seeing the Golden Order as an extension of Marika herself. He would even go as far as to take a sword gifted to him by Rennala and turn it into a symbol of his faith in the Order. To me, this reads as an obvious coping mechanism more than anything. Radagon's unwavering dedication to Marika's Order, despite its effects on his loved ones or even himself, only serves to make his existence and status all the more sad. After becoming her second Lord Consort, Radagon and Marika would have another pair of children, the twins Mikola and Melania. It's unclear what kind of relationship Radagon had with Marika at this point, but personally, I think given the amount of heartache Marika's actions had brought to bear on Radagon's life, between exiling their son and forcing him to leave his true love, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if he saw his newfound position as one of duty rather than passion. Despite this, Radagon would prove to be quite the capable lord, being loved by all across the lands between. He was able to maintain positive relationships with most of his children, and even his stepson, Godwin, the first son of Marika and Godfrey, who himself was a much loved, respected, and powerful figure in the lands between. Not to mention, he was basically the mascot for the Golden Order. The clear exception to this was Ranni, as it doesn't seem the two had much contact after Radagon left Liurnia, and it would seem that he also fell out of favor with Rykard as well, as he and Ranni would become increasingly disillusioned with the Golden Order. The children he seemed to be closest to were Mikola and Radagon. He and Mikola would spend time together crafting different incantations and spells, and Radagon, despite his clear idolization of Godfrey, loved and respected his father, proudly displaying his inherited red hair, making it a key part of his personality to show as much. Radagon would even go as far as to honor the memory of Godfrey, holding tournaments in massive coliseums across the land in honor of the great warrior. However, nothing could prepare him for what would happen next. What Radagon hadn't known about Marika is that during her crusade in the Realm of Shadow, after her ascension to godhood, she would make a horrifying discovery. She uncovered that the Greater Will, the deity worshipped by the Golden Order, had not only left the lands between, but had done so a long, long time ago. This shook Marika to her very core and significantly damaged the faith in her own order. She realized that her every action has likely been influenced by lies, manipulation, and misinformation. I believe that after this, and her subsequent betrothal to Radagon, Marika became close with Ranni, as she saw the same discontent for the Order within her. Perhaps she even grew to hold Ranni in high regard, putting her forth as Empyrean, a candidate for godhood, and a potential replacement for Marika herself. Unfortunately, Ranni had her own plans. Ranni saw the Golden Order for what it was, a power-hungry cult operating under assumptions and half-truths. She conspired with her brother Rykard to steal a fragment of the Rune of Death and enact a plan to remove herself from the grasp of the Order. She would task a group of assassins wielding daggers imbued with the Rune of Death to infiltrate the capital and execute her stepbrother, the much-beloved Godwin. At the same time, she would fatally wound herself with a similar dagger, sacrificing Godwin's soul for her own. This left Godwin a mindless, soulless husk, and Ranni a corporeal spirit, no longer in need of a physical body. This event would become known as the Night of Black Knives, and would serve as the straw that broke the camel's back for both Marika and Radagon. For Marika, Ranni's betrayal and Godwin's death completely shattered her faith in the Golden Order, and in an exceedingly rare act of pure, motherly anger, she attempts to shatter the Elden Ring. In the case of Radagon, all he likely knows at this point is that his stepson has been assassinated, his daughter has taken her own life, and his queen is trying to destroy the very thing he sacrificed so much to help her achieve. And like Marika, he breaks. Likely using some sort of magic, he finds a way to merge their bodies together once again. They fight for control, dominance shifting back and forth between Marika's destruction of the ring and Radagon's desperation in trying to repair it. Eventually, Radagon is forced to admit failure, as the pieces of the Elden Ring lay at his feet. In a final act of shame, he seals himself, along with Marika, away inside the Erd Tree, with nobody ever knowing what happened.
The great Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. And in the night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish. Soon, Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring. The mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the Shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands, the ever-brilliant Gold Mask. Fear, the deathbed companion, the loathsome dung-eater, and Sir Gideon Ofnir, the all-knowing. And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord.
Thousands of years later, long after the Lands Between had been reduced to a shell of its former self, a lowly Tarnished arrives. Through sheer force of will and determination, they carve a path of death through the shambles of the once great kingdom. Somehow, they even manage to kill what remains of the demigods that stand in their way, including Radagon, Rykard, Melania, and even Mikola. They even encounter Ranni, who all this time later is still doing everything she can to undermine what little is left of the Golden Order. Eventually, the Tarnished find their way to the Erd Tree. Seeing Radagon's seal on its entrance, they come to a simple solution: burn it down. As they enter the base of the Erd Tree, they can see Marika crucified, held in place in the center of a cavernous arena. However, the rune holding up her body breaks, and as she falls to the floor, her feminine figure slowly morphs into that of a muscular man, and her golden locks slowly bleed into a deep red. Radagon, after all this time, is somehow still alive. no doubt still seething in his own shame and failure to stop Marika. And what does he see but a tarnished, bearing the great runes that once belonged to his children? I believe that in this moment, Radagon realizes several things. The order he fought so hard and sacrificed so much to maintain is gone. What remained of his children are likely dead, and their killer, for whatever reason, has come for him. In this moment, Radagon makes the decision to finally unleash all of his rage, sadness, and pain that he's forced himself to live with for several millennia. He picks up the hammer, crafted by the very person who not only willed him into being, but also for whom he sacrificed everything to serve. He does not speak, as there is nothing to say. He simply marches forward. In the end, Radagon proves no match for the Tarnished, and he is finally granted death. Most might take note that Radagon's musical theme is actually the main theme of the game. Knowing what I know now, I don't think I can ever view this piece of music in the same way. It no longer sounds triumphant, heroic, or epic. Instead, all I hear is desperation, sorrow, and longing. The story of Radagon is a tragic one, to say the least. He was a man quite literally born out of vengeful ambition and died by the hand of a stranger. In life, he did everything he felt he could to do right by those he cared for. By all accounts, he was a good man that fell victim to the ambitions of those closest to him and condemned himself to a fate he did not deserve. To me, the most tragic part of Radagon's story is that he likely died thinking he failed everyone he loved, when in reality, he never had a choice. Thank you so much to everyone watching. I am so sorry this video was, I think, several months late, but that's kind of my thing nowadays. I figured now is a good time since we finally finished the actual playthrough I was going through on the channel, which, by the way, a link to that playlist will be in the description below. I'm still working on the final highlight. You'll have to bear with me on that. I have to go over like 7 hours of footage. But hey, we got here eventually, right? Thank you again for watching, and I will see all of you in the next video. Have a lovely day.